The sound of a water droplet echoes in the darkness. Suddenly, a young man snaps his eyes open in a panic as he sees an IV drip. With his head wrapped in bandages, he is completely confused and out of breath. Then, the boy realizes he is lying in a hospital bed. Looking up, he notices an IV bag hanging beside him. At that moment, the boy sits up in bed and wonders where he is. He looks out the window and sees some birds singing outside. But what shocks him is the sight of a modern city filled with buildings. That landscape of skyscrapers was completely alien to him. Because of this, the boy feels even more lost, unable to understand anything. He leans down with an expression of pure panic. Then, the young man looks at his hands and sees that one is bandaged. Touching his body, he tries to process what is happening. Soon, the young man gets up and walks toward a mirror. With a trembling hand, he picks up the object to see his reflection. Looking into the mirror, the young man sees a face he doesn't recognize. Just as he is about to say something, a noise interrupts him. It is the sound of footsteps of someone approaching his room. At that moment, a nurse opens the door and enters the room. The woman finds it strange to see the patient's bed empty. She then enters the room calling out the name Habari, but the boy is hidden on the ceiling, and the healthcare professional doesn't see him. The young man prepares to strike the woman with a pen. He wonders where he is while trying to reach the nurse. Hanging upside down, he points the pen at her neck. Suddenly, a bright light shines, and the young man is shocked by what he sees. Time goes back 10 years, and we see an intense struggle in a forest. A figure runs through the mountains of Kyoto like a furious gale. His teeth are clenched so hard they could break, and with the pressure, his teeth actually begin to shatter. His muscle fibers are pushed to the limit during the run. With an audible snap, his leg muscle tears. This is Goko, a ninja praying for the safety of his master. While praying for his lord, a chill runs through his entire body. He feels that something terrible is about to happen, and in the distance, the ninja sees the Honnoji temple on fire. The place is surrounded by soldiers, and flames consume everything. Goko is shocked by the scene and grips his sword tightly. Flaming arrows rain from the sky, hitting several soldiers on the ground. The ninja dodges the arrows, while seeing his companions being struck. Around the ninja, everything is in chaos with the temple in flames. Then, he despairs upon realizing his master is not safe. With his reason fading, a blue aura explodes from his body. He activates a ninja ability to heal his injured leg. With this, the technique forcefully stitches his torn muscles back together. The warrior steps firmly on the ground and shouts his lord's name. Jumping toward the fire, he moves forward for the rescue, but a silhouette emerges from the flames, saying he shall not pass. The man recognizes him as Goko, Nobunaga's personal ninja. With his eyes glowing blue, the servant prepares to fight. His opponent is Ryuga, the famous taker of 999 lives. Goko then charges at high speed to face the samurai. With a furious look full of power, he goes on the attack. Ryuga mocks him and says it would be a waste not to fight. With that, the samurai prepares to draw his sword quickly. His blade moves at the speed of sound to strike the ninja, but Goko is faster and manages to catch the tip of the sword. With his strength, he shatters the enemy's blade with his hands. To the ninja, the speed of sound is nothing more than a crawl. Ryuga is in shock because his strike was stopped and his weapon broken. Then, he notices the glowing tattoos on Goko's body. The ninja is a superhuman who uses the power of nature in his body. With an impressive jump, Goko shows what a true ninja is. He lands a devastating kick to the samurai's face, defeating him. Wrapped in his blue aura, the servant continues his path without hesitation. Even before the enemy's body hits the ground, the young man has already vanished. He quickly reaches the depths of the Honnoji temple. Amidst the fire, the warrior lands, searching for his master. But what he sees in the middle of the flames is a scene of pure horror. It was the body of his lord, pierced by blades like a porcupine. The ninja's eyes fill with tears upon seeing the tragedy. A mysterious hand then pushes one of the swords even deeper. Goko desperately screams the name of his master, Nobunaga. Beside the body was the one responsible for that terrible scene. A man with a one-eyed mask covered in tattoos. Filled with hatred, the ninja asks who that villain is. Then, he charges with a powerful strike to avenge his lord. The masked man seems to smile beneath his mask. The warrior attacks with all his fury and speed, but the mysterious enemy easily blocks the ninja's strike. Each of the ninja's hand strikes is extremely powerful. His attacks are strong enough to cut through steel like cheese. With one of these strikes, he hits a wooden beam directly. His fists are also capable of crushing solid rock. He delivers a punch with all his might toward the enemy, but to his surprise, the masked man defends against the attack. The enemy manages to block all his strikes with ease. Irritated, Goku demands that the mysterious opponent show his face. The masked man then retreats, floating backward. He lands gracefully while a dark aura surrounds him. The villain then reveals his true form to the ninja. Goku is shocked by the appearance of his adversary. The enemy uses a giant scroll to defend an attack. The ninja then realizes he is facing a scroll user. With a series of hand signs, the man prepares for a technique. He performs the movements to summon an immense power. The signs are made with high speed and precision. The villain then concentrates his energy in his masked eye. With the final sign, he releases powerful magic. A massive bolt of lightning descends from the heavens toward the ninja. In the middle of the fire, Goku tries to protect himself from the attack. He crosses his arms to defend against the electric discharge, but looking up, he realizes the enemy has fled. The ninja screams furiously for him to come back and fight. At that moment, his master calls him with his last bit of strength. The fallen lord asks his faithful servant not to worry anymore. Nobunaga knows the enemy is a monster and very powerful. Goku looks at his master with a gaze of sadness and determination. The lord knows he cannot win but asks his ninja to escape. The servant feels his master's life slowly slipping away. With his last bit of strength, he falls to the ground feeling despair. The young man realizes there is nothing more he can do. Lying there injured, the ninja feels completely helpless. A deep frustration takes hold of his soul. He remembers his master's dream of a world without conflict, a peaceful kingdom where people could flourish and live well. The ninja understands the true meaning of the word peace, and he remembers when his lord told him about his dream. The vision of a tranquil world was Nobunaga's goal. With tears in his eyes, Goku promises to carry on his master's dream. At that moment, the glowing figure of the master appears among the flames, stating he has reached his final limit. Then, the body of the fallen lord begins to vanish amidst the many swords stuck in the ground. Desperate, the warrior screams his dear leader's name with all his might, but the mysterious masked villain only watches the tragic scene with total coldness. With the temple collapsing, the young man remains kneeling, feeling the pain of losing his master. Then, the servant joins his hands in a deep prayer, honoring the memory of the deceased. As the ancient rule dictates, he decides he must sacrifice himself to follow his leader. Holding his sword firmly, the young man accepts that this is the sad fate of his class. With a melancholy smile, he wonders if the long-dreamed of peace truly exists. After all, in the midst of that era of wars, the fighter never witnessed a tranquil moment. Even so, the young man keeps his head held high, showing great determination in his eyes. Since his former master believed in a perfect world, he decides to trust that vision. Surrounded by a glowing magic, the young man wishes to be reincarnated in a completely peaceful place. Then, without hesitation, he completes his sacrifice, falling to the temple floor shortly after. Time moves forward 500 years, and we see a large modern building on a sunny day. In a medical room, the doctor asks the boy to repeat his name and his age. Looking serious, the student replies that his name is Habari, and he is 17 years old. We then see the exterior of the large modern hospital, while the doctor speaks with the patient. At that point, the doctor asks the boy to repeat his name and current age once more. Looking serious, the student replies that his name is Habari, and he is a high school student. With that, the doctor smiles, saying the young man has recovered incredibly well and can now be discharged. Once outside, a nurse congratulates the young man on his discharge and mentions the start of classes. The young man then remembers when he woke up confused and almost attacked the woman from the room's ceiling. Letting out a sigh of relief, He is glad he didn't hurt the poor, innocent lady. Walking through the modern street, the ninja realizes that very bizarre things truly happen. Apparently, the warrior's ancient soul inhabited the body of this student, who was in a coma. The young man then remembers his master and the peaceful world the great leader dreamed of so much. He is absolutely sure that he was gravely injured by his own blade during that fire. Even without understanding how he woke up 500 years in the future, the boy accepts his new reality. Looking at the clear sky of the wonderful city, he lets out a sincere and very calm laugh. Just ahead, we see a mother with her daughter, playing happily with a puppy on the sidewalk. The student passes by them, observing that familiar scene so full of affection and innocence. The former fighter's expression softens as he witnesses such a simple and comforting moment. With a beautiful smile on his face, the young man finally understands the true meaning of the word peace. Then, the young man decides that it is worth trying to live quietly in this wonderful new era. But soon after, the young man feels a slight discomfort and notices something strange about his own body. That tight uniform made it quite difficult for him to move as he walked toward the school. Suddenly, a huge guy and his two sidekicks blocked the path, calling the student's name. Laughing, the big bully comments with great surprise that the student was still alive. Analyzing the fellow, the ninja notices that the guy has his guard completely open and radiates no danger. Furthermore, the mysterious man approaches with a gigantic, excited smile on his face. Because of this, the hero naively deduces that the group were friends of the former owner of that body. One of the sidekicks nudges the boy, demanding the proper greetings for the big boss named Kumazawa. The young man looks closely at the giant bully while processing the name he just heard. Being very polite, the protagonist gives a beautiful smile and greets his supposed colleague. The big guy laughs satisfied, saying the student became much more obedient after his accident. Making a mean face, the brute mocks the scary fall that hurt the boy's head. Suddenly, the big guy grabs the young man's neck, promising a fun school life together. Completely caught by surprise, the former ninja's eyes widen upon hearing those specific words. The young man focuses on the sentence and concludes that going to school must be something wonderful and fun. After all, during his troubled past in the war, he never had the chance to enjoy life. Very innocent, the young man smiles back, thanking them for having such good people looking after him. Quite excited, the bully drags the student by the neck, calling the gang to the usual spot. Being led along, the boy happily thinks that this is his first walk with a partner. Observing the institution's beautiful courtyard, the hero feels he has finally found true peace. But the illusion ends quickly when he sees the big guy stepping on a student and ordering him to lick his shoe. Faced with that cowardly scene, the protagonist gets a blank expression, trying to understand it all. Then, the big guy blows cigarette smoke and orders the victim to lick his shoes until they are very clean. While the sidekicks laugh and record everything, the bully comments that the fallen student used to be very good at that. But suddenly, the brute's expression changes completely, showing a look full of anger and irritation. Looking at the red-haired boy lying on the ground, the big guy seems to remember something and completely changes the subject. Then, the coward uses the scared boy's head as an ashtray, saying he found a new chair there. With that, one of the sidekicks shows a video on his phone, and the boss brags about having hit the redhead's sister. The recording shows the poor girl being mistreated by the bullies while she desperately begged them to stop. On the screen, the young girl appears crying a lot and apologizing, while the bully finds the whole situation funny. Laughing loudly, the coward says he even thought about ruining the girl's clothes to have a little more fun. Hearing those terrible words, the redhead begins to tremble with hatred and despair, lying there on the ground. Then, the boy can't take it anymore and charges furiously at the giant, imploring them to leave his sister alone. But the brute retaliates with a crushing blow, throwing the poor guy to the ground and telling him not to get in the way. Totally irritated, the big guy yells that next time he will do horrible things to the girl and to him, pulling the redhead's hair with violence. The monster forces the student to apologize repeatedly right there. Observing all that cruelty in silence, the former ninja's expression changes to an extremely serious look. Then, the hero walks calmly to the leader of the bullies and places his hand on the big guy's shoulder without hesitation. That unexpected attitude leaves the sidekicks shocked, while the brute himself turns his face in alarm. Obviously, the boy from the past has no idea how technology works and didn't understand anything from that video. However, the young warrior knows very well that cowardly actions like those are completely against peace. With that, the student states that there is nothing more ridiculous than a weakling hitting defenseless people. The red-haired student lying on the ground widens his eyes, completely shocked by his classmates' courage. But this direct provocation makes the giant's blood boil, and he turns furiously to question the boy. At that moment, the hero only wanted to avoid trouble, and just said the truth without intending to start a fight. Being very sincere, the former ninja comments that he doesn't have good memories and asks the big guy to show him how it's done. With a very imposing posture, the young man lifts his own foot, waiting for the bully to lick his shoe. That bold move was the last straw, and a vein pops on the cowardly leader's forehead, showing his total rage. Completely blinded by anger, the brute loses his patience for good, and the heavy atmosphere indicates the start of a fight. Giving an exaggerated and evil laugh, the giant mocks him, saying the young man left his memory at the hospital. Then, the monster cracks his knuckles threateningly, promising to teach the hero a painful lesson. Despite the big threat, the former fighter keeps a serene gaze, without showing a bit of fear of the enemy. With eyes glowing with rage, the coward charges, throwing a gigantic punch toward the young man's face. Meanwhile, the sidekicks film everything with a mean smile, thinking their classmate made a big mistake. The reincarnated warrior was truly distracted, and a bit intoxicated by his new peaceful life. After all, the bully leader never imagined that a boy considered so weak would have the audacity to face him. At that instant, the hero is surprised, and his judgment ends up being delayed by a fraction of a second. However, the young warrior's survival instinct speaks louder, and he reacts with a devastating blow. As a natural reflex of his body, the young man lands a perfect punch right in the middle of the brute's chin. The sidekicks and the injured student are in shock, seeing that incredible technique born from intense training. The impact is so absurd that the big guy flies through the air, spitting blood, and being totally defeated right there. Looking at the unconscious giant, the protagonist realizes what he did and blames himself for not avoiding the fight. But the warrior's body reacted by pure reflex, and the big guy ended up all bruised on the ground. With the force of the blow, the brute flies backward and falls hard on the ground, completely knocked out. Looking at that, the young man panics and is startled by his own strength at that moment. The young warrior becomes desperate, thinking he took the life of an ordinary citizen by mistake. But suddenly, one of the sidekicks hears his boss groaning in pain and realizes he is alive. At this, the protagonist lets out a sigh of relief and is shocked that he survived the attack. With an expression of pain, the former ninja looks at his own hand, feeling the bone break. Looking closer, the hero realizes his fingers were all injured because of the punch. After all, the body of a simple student cannot handle the impact of a powerful ninja technique. Then, the sidekicks panic, screaming that their boss's face has become totally deformed. So they run to help their injured colleague and order an ambulance to be called immediately. While they carry the giant away, the group promises revenge, and the boy just watches it all in silence. Looking at his injured hand, the young man is happy he didn't gravely hurt that guy. At that moment, the hero approaches the red-haired student who was still lying on the ground, startled. With a gentle touch, the former fighter places his hand on the boy's shoulder to see if he is okay. But suddenly, a mysterious white smoke explodes from the redhead's body, leaving everyone confused. The protagonist is startled to see that strange smoke appearing out of nowhere and stays very alert. Enveloped by the mist, the boy from the ground stands up with a serious and totally different expression. The warrior from the past recognizes that ability and wonders if it is a clone technique. With his eyes fixed on the smoke, the young man stays on high alert and ready for any movement. In the middle of the mist, the red-haired student appears with a cigarette in his mouth and a very threatening aura. Taking a step forward, the young man comments on the move the protagonist used in the fight. Sensing the man's harmful intent, the former ninja increases his vigilance and glares at the opponent. Then, the orange-haired young man asks directly if his classmate is also a ninja. With glowing eyes, the young man repeats the question while a strange tattoo appears on his face. The warrior from the past realizes the fellow saw his birthmark and understands the situation. Taking a puff of his cigarette, the mysterious student reveals his true identity right there. The man introduces himself as Hattori and says he is part of the country's famous and feared ninja union. Suddenly, the school uniform disappears, and he appears in a complete black and red tactical outfit. Then, the assassin makes a hand sign and prepares to attack his target quickly. Surrounded by smoke, the enemy takes a battle stance and says he came to eliminate the hero. Without understanding anything, the former fighter wonders what this ninja union and mission would be. The young man looks at the kneeling assassin and tries to understand who this ninja Hattori is. In the blink of an eye, the enemy jumps toward his target with impressive speed. The student is caught by surprise and widens his eyes, seeing the sudden attack coming from the sky. The assassin jumps very high and quickly throws two strange objects toward the protagonist. Looking closer, the hero realizes they are electronic vapes spinning like shurikens. The former ninja focuses on the projectiles and prepares to dodge the attack with his sharp reflexes. Meanwhile, the enemy makes another hand sign and shouts the name of his next special technique. With his hands joined, the assassin prepares to launch a powerful and dangerous smoke bomb. The vapes explode on the ground, releasing a dense white smoke throughout the school courtyard. From inside the mist, the enemy screams the name of his special technique, called Smoke Prison. Seeing that, the protagonist is surprised and is quickly surrounded by the smoke rising from the ground. Then, the mist begins to spin rapidly, forming a large whirlwind around the young warrior. Even with limited vision, the student from the past tries to see through the smoke curtain. The hero picks up an improvised weapon and doesn't understand the reason for being attacked that way. He quickly picks up a metal pipe that was lying there on the ground to defend against the attack. But despite the confusion, the young man knows very well he cannot lower his guard at that moment. With the pipe in hand, the former ninja defends against a surprise attack coming from inside the smoke. The sound of clashing metal echoes through the courtyard, and the two warriors glare at each other with much anger. Even at a disadvantage, the young man stays alert and faces the opponent with much determination. The assassin is shocked to realize that his near-perfect disguise was totally discovered. After all, ninjas disguise themselves to collect information and infiltrate important locations. They blend into the crowd to complete their missions without raising any suspicion. Sometimes appearing weak and other times reliable, they deceive everyone around them. Hiding their claws, the spies live a normal life until it's time to attack their targets. But without any warning, their friendly expression changes, and the true terror is finally revealed. Then, they show their claws and eliminate all their targets without any mercy in their hearts. The enemy is impressed by the hero's ability to hide his battle spirit, and the former fighter notices the redhead's skill in pretending to be someone weak and defenseless. With this, the protagonist understands that Hattori is strong and wonders if there are other ninjas nearby. Taking advantage of the distraction, the enemy taunts the young man for thinking too much during the fight. The assassin blows smoke from his cigarette right into our hero's face on purpose. With his eyes stinging, the student from the past curses the opponent for using such a dirty trick. In a quick move, the red-haired ninja manages to wound the protagonist's arm with his blade. The young warrior lets out a groan of pain and feels the deep cut made by his enemy, but he retaliates with a powerful kick, throwing the assassin away and creating some distance. The enemy takes advantage of the smoke and disappears into the mist to prepare his next attack. From inside the smoke prison, the man mocks him, saying the hero will never find him there. Desperate, the protagonist screams, asking his opponent to wait and stop that fight. The young man says he doesn't want to fight and asks for an explanation to understand what is happening. The enemy's voice echoes, saying there is a dangerous ninja and a serial killer in the district. He then reveals that his current mission is to hunt this criminal and finish him for good. The former fighter realizes that the man is very good at erasing his presence and staying hidden. A shadow passes quickly through the smoke, showing the modern assassin's incredible speed. The hero recognizes the technique as smoke style, a variation of the fire style he knows. He concludes it is a stealthy elimination technique used for quick and silent attacks. The enemy accuses the young man of not registering with the Union, and therefore he is the main suspect. But the young man just says that all he wants most in this new life is to live in peace and quiet. Hearing that, the assassin gives a laugh and calls the protagonist a liar, not believing him. Suddenly, smoke hands grab the hero's leg, and the assassin says that no one in peace is a ninja. The man adds that this life does not go with that of a professional assassin like them. The former fighter realizes that it is just a smoke clone, and that only the arm was real. Then, the assassin launches several sharp kunai from within the mist to attack his target. The blades surround the young warrior, and the enemy tells him to prepare for his end. Right there, with a serious look, the hero realizes his suspicion was right since the beginning of that fight. He closes his eyes calmly, accepting the situation and understanding the truth about that new era. The moment the blades get close to his neck, the young man just closes his eyes calmly. He finally accepts the truth that there are very powerful ninja warriors in this new era. The former fighter understands what this means, and a bluish aura begins to glow on his neck. With glowing eyes, he laments that the era of peace he fought for was just a big lie. It seems the era of wars never ended, and he releases an impressive blue energy. With wide eyes, the hero releases all his power at once, surprising everyone. The explosion of energy throws all the kunai away and destroys the enemy's smoke prison. Seeing that, the assassin is completely shocked and without understanding what just happened. Apparently, the ninja tracks his opponents in the smoke by their body heat and movement. Basically, he reads the enemy's presence, and this gives an enormous advantage in smoke fights. But when the protagonist released his special ninjutsu, something totally unexpected happened. The assassin is terrified to realize that his opponent's presence has completely changed. The former fighter's aura became gigantic and filled the entire battlefield at once. Breaking into a cold sweat, the enemy is paralyzed with fear upon feeling that immense and overwhelming power. The young warrior's presence was so great that the assassin could no longer locate him. For the first time in his life, the ninja cannot identify the target's position and panics. Desperate, the man tries to find the student, but his presence is everywhere. He wonders where his opponent could be and looks for him in every possible direction. But suddenly, a cold blade is pressed against his neck from behind him. The young warrior appears silently, and the assassin is in shock at his speed. With a victorious smile and glowing eyes, the hero from the past announces that the fight is over. The modern ninja is left speechless, totally defeated and surprised by his target's skill. The young man says that if he were an enemy, the man would already be gone, and that he knows nothing about this era. Confused, the assassin wonders what the young man means by this era, and who he really is. Then, the student reveals his true name and introduces himself as the legendary ninja Goko from the past. The hero says he was reborn in this time, and the assassin screams the name Goko, not believing what he heard. The former fighter stares at the modern ninja while explaining his situation to him. The legendary young man says that this is the truth and that he really came from 500 years in the past. With this, the young man asks a favor and tells the man to teach him some things about the new world. He then asks the assassin to show him where he can find some good food nearby. The modern ninja is still processing everything and wonders if what he heard is really true. He thinks that all of it is madness while watching the legendary Goko walk away calmly. Meanwhile, a mysterious frog observes the entire scene from afar without being noticed by anyone. With a fixed gaze, the The mysterious frog seems to repeat the name Goko in its mind. Shocked, so the modern ninja takes the legendary warrior to a fast food place called King Burger. Looking at a poster, the former warrior wonders if that strange thing in the ad is food. The man from the past is in disbelief and questions out loud if that can be considered a meal. The modern ninja then confirms it and explains the strange dish is called a hamburger. Taking the chance, the redhead asks for the cashier's number but gets shot down in front of everyone. With the trays in hand, the legendary warrior comments that he's never seen food with those colors before. Without a second thought, the redhead takes a huge bite of his sandwich while the other remains suspicious. The modern ninja chews with delight and seems to be loving the meal he ordered at the fast food place. Still wary, the former warrior decides to smell the sandwich before taking his first bite. The man from the past stares at the food with a serious and very suspicious expression. Mustering his courage, he takes a small bite, and his eyes go wide from the flavor. To his surprise, the legendary ninja realizes the hamburger is incredibly delicious. Then, explanation begins about the modern ninja union, known as Shinoran. They also handle problems involving illicit substances and dealings in the city. Additionally, they are responsible for controlling the use of firearms and blades in the underworld. Basically, they handle gang wars and other problems the police won't even touch. It's explained that to use ninjutsu, you must have a special license from the Ninja Union. The redhead explains that at the Ninja Union, they have to memorize the face of every affiliated member. And since the protagonist wasn't registered, they immediately thought he was an enemy. With that, the modern ninja bows deeply and sincerely apologizes for the misunderstanding. With his mouth full of fries, the former warrior says it's all right and tells him not to worry. The hero downplays the incident and says the injury on the redhead's foot will heal in no time. The modern ninja is shocked by the man's calmness and wonders how he can say that. The young man with orange hair is completely charmed by the hero's attitude, finding him radiant. In his thoughts, the redhead remembers that Goko is the strongest ninja in all of recorded history. The modern operative can hardly believe the great legend is sitting right in front of him. But in reality, the legendary warrior is just eating fries with his mouth wide open. Even so, the modern ninja continues to blush while looking at his new companion. He tries to hide his excitement so that the legendary warrior doesn't notice anything strange. The redhead thinks that he can't look like an amateur, or he won't be able to stand by his hero's side. Changing the subject, the young man comments that this whole reincarnation story is unbelievable. He then asks if the legendary warrior can use a jutsu like the one they saw earlier, but with a serious look, the former warrior denies it, saying that jutsu wasn't his at all. The hero wonders if it has to do with the jutsu of that mysterious one-eyed ninja. Then the protagonist tells the redhead that his new name is Habari, which confuses the young man. He explains that Goko was his old name, and that from now on, he will be called Habari. Hearing his idol's new name, the modern ninja can't hide his reddened face. The newly named Habari says he wants to try living a new life under a new name. The red-haired man thinks his idol's new name is amazing and very stylish. With sparkling eyes, the modern ninja seems to have something else to say to his hero. The former warrior tells him to drop the formalities since they're the same age now. The protagonist gives his new companion a gentle look and a charming smile. With his face completely red, the modern ninja timidly nods and says, "Wes, sir." With that, the redhead reveals there's another reason he attacked the protagonist. The legendary warrior asks if he's referring to the rogue ninjas that exist in the city. The modern operative confirms and explains the ninja union's strict rules for its members. He says that recently there have been cases of ninjas openly attacking civilians in the streets. The first case happened a month ago when the Minister of the Environment was visiting the city. On that rainy day, the minister was walking through the city streets with his personal bodyguards. After finishing his business, the minister went into a deserted alley to sneak a cigarette. He publicly opposed the tobacco industry but could never quit his smoking habit. Although all the alley entrances were secured by guards, something terrible happened there. Suddenly, the bodyguards hear a panicked scream coming from inside the dark alley. The minister appears, screaming and clutching his neck as if he were choking and out of air. The bodyguards panic as they see their boss's face swelling and changing color. The men try to help the minister, who ends up falling to the ground, writhing in intense pain. With a final cry of agony, the important man passes away right there in the alley. The minister's body lies motionless on the ground, lifeless, as his bodyguards watch in terror. With a serious expression, the former warrior listens intently to every detail of the story. The redhead continues, explaining that a lethal poison was detected in the body's analysis, and since then, more victims have appeared around the city, all taken out in the same mysterious way. Furthermore, the redhead says the entire case is being kept secret from the general public. To the modern ninja, only another ninja could have gotten past security and used the poison. Through gritted teeth, the operative vows to hunt down the culprit and take them down for good. Hibari observes the young man and comments on his righteous indignation and sense of duty. Thinking to himself, the protagonist concludes that the young Hattori talks a lot, but is trustworthy. The former warrior gets the redhead's attention and asks him to look at the customers in the diner. He explains that no one there cares about their presence. Everyone is living their lives in peace. People think ninjas are just characters from stories or legends of the past, and if they knew the truth, it would only cause mass panic and a lot of paranoia. The protagonist says the underworld stays in the underworld, and they protect the peace on the surface. But he concludes by saying that right now, that peace is being seriously threatened by someone. Suddenly, the scene in the fast food place transforms into a setting of destruction and terror. With a determined look, the legendary warrior seems to have made an important decision. The redhead then asks the former warrior for help in tracking down and finding the poison user. The modern operative remembers that the hero said he wanted to live a quiet and peaceful life, but he insists that if that's true, the protagonist can't just stand by and watch everything happen. Without a word, the legendary ninja faces his new companion with a serious look. With his eyes fixed on the modern operative, the hero from the past reflects on his new life. He thinks about how he always lived under his former lord's orders and now must follow someone new. He remembers his old master, who dreamed of a peaceful world for everyone. With his eyes closed, the man from the past remembers the wish of his former lord, Nobunaga. With a determined look, he agrees to help, saying he will lend his strength to the mission. The modern ninja is shocked and speechless upon hearing the legendary warrior's positive response. Excited, the redhead thanks him and says that having the hero by his side is like having 100 men fighting with them. At that, the modern operative asks for the protagonist's number to contact him through the ninja union. The former warrior is confused by the request and asks what this number thing he asked for is. The orange-haired young man explains that nowadays, they use devices called smartphones to communicate. He then hands a cell phone to his new partner and asks if that is his device. The phone's screen lights up, revealing a picture of a red-haired girl and 240 missed calls. Later that day, the protagonist arrives home to find a mysterious woman waiting for him. A tall, long-legged girl is standing in front of his house with a serious expression. The red-haired young woman yells at him, asking where he's been all day and what took him so long. With a guilty expression, the former warrior simply apologizes for being late. The redhead girl starts giving orders, telling him to open the door so she can use the shower. Without complaining, the young man just nods and gets ready to open his front door. The woman then asks if he went to McDonald's and accuses him of eating junk after leaving the hospital. She scolds him, saying that type of food is like poison to his body. Hearing the word poison, the protagonist becomes alert and starts to suspect the strange woman. The girl introduces herself as a Mommy Yui, an acquaintance of Hibari's mother and a university student. The redhead explains that she was put in charge of looking after the protagonist after he got out of the hospital. With a blushing face, the modern operative is captivated by the girl's beauty and compliments her. Hibari wonders if he should meet up with her, and the redhead confirms that he should. The modern operative tells him to use a map app to find her address, but the redhead says it will be fine and tells his new friend not to worry about a thing. He just warns the protagonist to be careful, as you never know who might be a ninja. Arriving home, the former warrior notices it's starting to rain and stops on the sidewalk. A voice calls to him from inside the house, and he replies that he's coming in with his bags. Suddenly, a manhole cover starts moving on its own in the middle of the dark, rainy street. A hand made of water emerges from the manhole and moves silently toward the house. The rain starts to get heavier, and night falls over the city, making everything darker. Inside the house, the red-haired girl thanks him for his hospitality and enters the apartment's hallway. The protagonist watches the woman and starts to think about her true identity and intentions. He remembers her words about poison and how suspicious it sounded to him at the time. With a wary look, the former warrior wonders if he can really trust this woman. The girl compliments how tidy the apartment is, and the protagonist is surprised by the comment. Hibari says that what bothers him most is the excessive weight of his new companion's luggage. He finds the suitcase's weight strange and suspects something is wrong with this situation. With a mischievous smile, the red-haired girl says she brought something very nice for him inside the suitcase. The protagonist gets curious and wonders what could be inside such a heavy piece of luggage. She opens the suitcase and starts carefully taking out various pieces of gym equipment from inside. In a swift move, the protagonist tries to close the suitcase, but the girl is faster than him. The woman comments that his school is quite rough, and that's why he tried to jump from the roof. With a confident smile, she says that to defeat someone stronger, he's going to need help. The young woman offers him a cup with a strange powder and says this is exactly what he needs right now. The former warrior is suspicious and wonders if it's some kind of dangerous poison, but the girl reveals that it's a juxtalist protein to help with his training. The protagonist is confused and doesn't understand a thing when he hears the word protein from her. Sitting on the floor, the woman calls him a weakling and says he's still the same as always. She mentions that it's been 10 years since the last time they saw each other. The young woman starts pulling out various dumbbells and weights from her heavy suitcase. The man from the past is shocked to see the amount of equipment she brought. The girl complains that he's too skinny and has no muscle on his body to fight. She says she brought various pieces of equipment from the gym for him to start training immediately. The young woman adds that as his older sister, she can't sleep because she's so worried. The protagonist stands frozen, holding the dumbbells, without understanding what is happening. The woman starts showing him how to use the equipment and complains that he doesn't know anything. The former warrior thinks she might be a disguised enemy, trying to trick him right there. But seeing her struggle to use the equipment, he concludes that she isn't an enemy. He realizes she's just worried about Hibari's well-being and wants to help him. The man from the past is in a dilemma, not knowing if he should continue with this charade. The girl explains that his mother helped her a lot, and that's why she's here to return the favor. She then says she's going to live with him for a while, and grips the equipment tightly. With a gentle smile, the woman asks him not to think about ending his life again and to take care of himself. The protagonist is speechless, just watching the girl with the dumbbells in her hands. He wonders if he should tell her the truth and reveal that he's not the real Hibari. But before he can say anything, the girl interrupts him with a tired sigh. The woman complains that she's all sweaty and needs a shower to cool off from the heat. She complains about the distance from the house to the station and starts taking off her clothes in front of him. The former warrior's eyes go wide, shocked by the girl's bold and unexpected action. The young woman throws her clothes on the floor and asks him to get a towel for her shower. With a flushed face, the man from the past wonders if shame disappeared in 500 years. The girl gets in the shower and starts taking a long, relaxing bath to clean up. Outside, the protagonist sits on the balcony and patiently waits for the woman to finish. He picks up the cell phone and looks at the girl's picture, remembering her name is Yui. The former warrior concludes that she really is just a civilian friend of Hibari's mother. Suddenly, a blue bolt of lightning strikes from the sky and hits the protagonist right on the head. With his eyes glowing, he seems to have an idea or an important memory at that moment. The young man gets up and goes to the balcony, watching the rain that's starting to fall outside. A mysterious man watches the rain and comments that it always rains when something is about to happen. The protagonist becomes more alert, knowing that rain is the perfect weather for a ninja to attack. The sound of the rain muffles footsteps and conceals one's presence, making infiltration easier. With watchful eyes, the former warrior analyzes all possible entry points to the house. He identifies the single main entrance and prepares for any attack coming from that direction. The man from the past also counts 3 windows on the first floor that could be used to break in. In addition, he spots 2 more windows on the second floor that need to be watched. With a confident smile, the protagonist keeps all doors and windows under his guard. But while he's watching the house, the red-haired girl gets out of the shower and walks through the bathroom. Suddenly, a creature made of water forms on the bathroom floor and approaches the young woman. The enemy finally arrives, entering the house through a secret entrance the hero didn't know about. The woman continues her shower peacefully, not noticing the strange presence behind her. She turns around and is confused, sensing something strange in the air, but seeing nothing unusual. But when she turns again, the water creature is right behind her, ready to strike. The water monster reveals its horrifying face with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. The creature grabs the girl from behind, and a strange mark suddenly appears on her shoulder. The young woman screams in terror upon seeing the monster, and the creature smiles with its long, disgusting tongue. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist appears and lands a powerful punch on the monster's face. He protects the red-haired girl and faces the enemy with great anger and determination in his eyes. The young woman screams Habari's name, surprised by his sudden and life-saving appearance. But the former warrior realizes his punch had no impact on the water creature. It felt like he was punching water, and his attack caused no damage at all. The protagonist yells for the girl to hide while he faces the monster head-on. Frightened, the young woman covers herself with a towel and agrees to hide so she won't get in the way. The man from the past watches the woman move away and turns his attention back to the water enemy. The creature regenerates completely and returns to its original form without a scratch. The protagonist faces the monster and realizes that it's also a ninja with special abilities. The enemy lets out an evil laugh, and its eyes glow with a scary, yellow light. The water creature praises the young man's perception for having noticed its presence in the house. The former warrior accuses the monster of being the culprit behind the serial cases in the city. The enemy holds up a small goldfish and asks if it heard what the young man just said. With a mocking smile, the monster says the protagonist is a fool for thinking it would tell him. The water creature squeezes the goldfish tightly, showing its cruelty to the small animal. It then says it might reconsider if the young man hands over the girl he just saved. The protagonist is shocked and furious at his water enemy's disgusting proposal. The monster compliments the girl's beauty and says it has seen her in some model magazine. The creature licks its lips and says that a woman's tears are sweet and tasty. With a cold, emotionless gaze, the former warrior simply says he understands the situation. With his eyes glowing blue, the hero vows that he's going to finish that monster for good. A powerful aura surrounds the protagonist, and he prepares to unleash his full power. The water monster scoffs, saying that water can be far more terrifying than he can imagine. The water monster uses a special technique and prepares to strike its opponent with full force. With glowing eyes, the protagonist faces the creature and says its face might have come out all right. He then asks how the monster's heart is doing and launches a powerful counter-attack. The man from the past shoves his hand inside the enemy's water body and grabs it from within. With a determined look, the former warrior realizes the true nature of the monster's ability. He understands that the creature can liquefy its entire body to avoid physical attacks. The enemy takes advantage of the situation and starts entering the protagonist's body through his mouth. The young warrior is caught off guard and feels the water invading his airways. The monster says it will flood him from the inside and suffocate him until he can no longer breathe. Desperate, the man from the past realizes the enemy is now inside his body. He tries to grab the creature, but can't hold on to the water that slips through his hands. The monster says that if it gets all the way inside, the protagonist will be finished for good. With wide eyes, the hero realizes the danger and tries to think of a quick solution. An explanation begins about the 5 basic elements of ninjutsu, which are fire and water. The other 3 elements are lightning, earth, and wind, which complete the foundation of ninja power. A ninja who undergoes rigorous training eventually awakens one of these 5 elements. On rare occasions, some ninjas awaken special and unusual elements like smoke. Hattori's smoke style is actually a variation of the powerful and destructive fire style. But for some reason, Goku never awakened any elemental ninjutsu in his past life. He became the strongest, using only physical enhancement and basic fighting techniques. In other words, Goku's ninjutsu turns his own body into a deadly weapon. And for someone who relies on physical attacks, an opponent who can liquefy is a problem. The monster's red eyes gleam as it realizes the huge advantage it has in the fight. The water enemy knows that for the protagonist, it's a terrible matchup of abilities. The creature continues to enter the hero's body, who begins to suffocate, unable to breathe. With his mouth full of water, the former warrior realizes the situation is getting very bad. The monster lets out an evil laugh and tells the young warrior to just be done with it already. But the protagonist says he's not out of the fight yet and unleashes a blue energy. An electric aura surrounds his fist, and he concentrates all his power into a single point. With a battle cry, he punches the bathroom wall, completely destroying it with his strength. The water monster is shocked and doesn't understand what its opponent is trying to do. The protagonist is thrown out of the house and lands in the middle of the dark, rainy street. With water coming out of his mouth, the man from the past coughs and tries to catch his breath. The creature is confused and wonders what the young man is thinking by leaving the house. The enemy thinks he's either desperate for air or has simply gone completely crazy. It believes that going out into the rain will only increase its advantage in the battle. Upside down, the protagonist smiles, seeming to have a secret plan in mind. With his voice muffled by the water, he says he came outside especially for his enemy. He then warns that if the creature wants to run, now is the time to do it. The monster is intrigued by the young man's confidence and notices its technique is working. The water monster thinks the protagonist is begging for his life in a strange way. It becomes furious at the young man's audacity, telling it to run instead of asking for mercy. The water creature screams that the young warrior is mocking it with that confident attitude. The enemy says it won't run away at all and prepares to attack with more force. It refuses to back down and continues to fill the protagonist's body with more and more water. The former warrior spits out the water and tries to get rid of the creature that is slowly suffocating him. The monster tells the hero to suffocate and claw at his own throat until his end comes. With a malicious smile, the creature watches the protagonist squirm and release his aura. Suddenly, the man from the past leaps high into the air, launching himself off the ground with a powerful jump. He soars high into the rainy sky, leaving the water monster behind on the wet ground. The creature is confused, not understanding what its opponent is planning to do in the air. The protagonist grabs a power line with his hands and prepares to use the electricity. The monster looks up and wonders what that thing the young warrior is holding is. It realizes it's a power line and is shocked by its enemy's idea. Desperate, the water enemy yells for the young man to wait and not do what he's thinking. With a challenging look, the protagonist says they're playing a game of who's braver. He concentrates the electricity in his hands and prepares to launch a devastating attack. A huge electrical discharge engulfs both the hero's and the water creature's bodies at the same time. The monster screams in pain as it's zapped by the powerful surge of energy that hits it. The protagonist also feels the pain of the electricity, but holds firm and continues the attack. It's explained that Hibari doesn't know what a power line is, but he understands nature. He felt a large concentration of lightning energy coming from that black cable on the pole. The electricity hits the water creature, which screams in pain as it feels the shock in its body. With his eyes turned white, the man from the past endures the pain and continues to channel the energy. The protagonist's body is covered in blue lightning, and he becomes a conductor of electricity. He manages to spit the water back out and get rid of the creature that was inside him. The monster is expelled from the hero's body and falls to the ground in a pool of electrified water. The former warrior floats in the air while the water creature thrashes on the ground, unable to move. The enemy says it can no longer maintain its technique and slipped out of the hero's body. Desperate, the monster realizes it needs to flee and turn back into mere water to escape. But the protagonist steps into a puddle of water and slowly approaches his fallen enemy. With a cold look, he says it seems the rain is stopping and the monster's time is up. The water creature panics as it sees the young warrior approaching with an electric aura. The protagonist grabs the monster's tongue tightly and glares at it with hatred in his eyes. With a swift movement, he pulls the creature's tongue and rips it out without any mercy. With a serious look, the hero says that playtime in the water is finally over for it. He concentrates the electricity in his fist and prepares to deliver the final blow to the monster. The water creature begs for its life and asks the protagonist to wait and not finish it. But the former warrior repeats that playtime in the water is over and shows no mercy. With his fist glowing with electrical energy, he prepares to end the fight for good. With wide eyes, the water monster watches the electric fist approach it. Desperate, the enemy screams for the protagonist to stop and not continue the attack. But the former warrior doesn't hesitate and lands a devastating punch on the water creature's body. The monster's body is thrown into the air by the force of the impact and begins to fall apart. The protagonist launches the water creature far away with a powerful, finishing kick. With white, lifeless eyes, the water monster is completely defeated by the hero. The enemy is left unable to fight, and its water body slowly dissolves on the ground. The goldfish falls to the ground, and the protagonist watches the scene with a tired look. The former warrior picks up the goldfish's fin and holds it carefully in his hands. With a thoughtful look, he observes the fin and seems to be reflecting on the fight. Looking at the hole in the wall, the man from the past regrets destroying a house that wasn't his. Back in the apartment, he feels a pain in his body and realizes the damage he took in the battle. He thinks that even with his enhanced body, he still felt the electric shock strongly. The protagonist concludes that he was lucky his enemy was weak against lightning attacks. He realizes he needs to train more, as he wouldn't be able to handle a powerful lightning user. With a tired sigh, the man from the past knows that more training awaits him. He opens the closet door and finds the red-haired girl huddled and scared inside. The young woman is startled by his presence and stares at him with wide, fearful eyes. With a gentle smile, the protagonist tells her not to worry, as she's safe now. The red-haired girl looks at him with a relieved expression, and a tear runs down her face. She notices that the young warrior's clothes are all scorched from the electricity. Worried, she asks what happened and who that monster was that attacked her in the bathroom. The former warrior just stares at her in silence, not knowing what to say to the frightened young woman. The woman asks what on earth happened to him and why he's all hurt. Suddenly, the girl loses her balance and falls into the protagonist's arms, unable to stand up. The man from the past is surprised by the sudden contact and doesn't know how to react to the situation. The young woman says she can't stand up and asks to borrow his shoulder to lean on. Awkwardly, the protagonist agrees and helps her up carefully so as not to hurt her. With a flushed and breathless face, the girl leans on her savior's shoulder with gratitude. The former warrior feels awkward with the closeness and tries to maintain his composure in front of her. The woman clutches the young man's shirt tightly and thanks him for saving her life. With a grateful look, she rests her head on his chest and thanks him once more. The protagonist is frozen by the gesture, and his face blushes slightly at the situation. Suddenly, he picks her up in his arms and carries her out of the closet with care and gentleness. The girl screams in surprise at the young man's action and asks him to put her down. The man from the past explains that she asked for his shoulder, and this is the normal way to help. He then takes her to the bedroom and helps her lie down on the bed to rest a bit. The protagonist apologizes for calling her weak and for all the trouble he caused. With a yawn, The girl says that at least he seems to have gotten a little stronger from the fight. With a gentle smile, the former warrior watches the young woman rest and feels relieved that she's okay. Later that night, the protagonist calls his friend and tells him about the water ninja. The redhead says he will report the case to the ninja union and they will send a recovery team from the top of a building. The modern operative observes the city and awaits orders from his organization. The protagonist sends a photo of the man he captured and asks if he's the serial attacker. The redhead replies that it's hard to say, but his ninjutsu explains the appearances on rainy days. The former warrior shows the goldfish and says the enemy must have observed his fight with Hattori. He concludes that the monster followed him home and waited for the right moment to strike. With the goldfish in the tank, the man from the past says this is the most likely scenario. The modern ninja agrees and says that either way, they need to question the suspect. Suddenly, the modern operative notices something strange and goes on high alert on the rooftop. He shouts for Abari to be careful and look behind him as danger is approaching. The protagonist is startled to see several green frogs covering the captured man's body. The frogs seem to be using some kind of jutsu on the man who is unconscious on the bed. The redhead yells that, if it's the ninjutsu he's thinking of, the enemy is there for one reason. A frog with a long tongue prepares to strike and silence the prisoner forever. The former warrior realizes the frogs are going to use poison needles to complete their mission. Several sharp, needle-like tongues shoot out of the frogs' mouths and advance toward the man. The modern operative shouts for the protagonist not to let the prisoner get taken out, no matter what. Making a quick judgment, the man from the past knows he won't make it in time. He concentrates his ninjutsu into his fingertips and prepares for a long-range attack. With incredible precision, he grabs several pins that were in a case on his desk. With a swift movement, he prepares to throw the pins as if they were shurikens. In just 0.05 of a second, he launches the pins toward the frogs with force. The pins hit the frogs dead on, piercing through them with impressive accuracy. Each frog is hit by a pin, and the protagonist's attack is a complete success. With a focused gaze, the former warrior shows his skill and precision in long-range combat. But one of the frogs manages to escape, and its long tongue gets close to the man's neck. The protagonist sees the danger and prepares to intercept the enemy's final attack. The frog's tongue stretches out and is about to hit the unconscious prisoner's neck. But at the last second, the man from the past manages to slice the frog's tongue with a pin. The tongue is severed, and the frog's attack is thwarted by the hero at the last instant. With wide eyes, the protagonist realizes he almost failed to save the man. Satisfied with his feat, he prepares to capture the last surviving frog. The frog's blood splatters everywhere, and the scene shows the precision of the hero's attack. The protagonist turns to grab the last frog, but it's already fleeing through the window. The frog's body is hit dead on, and the pen pierces through it with impressive force. With a determined look, the former warrior prepares to chase the last enemy. He jumps through the window and tries to catch the frog before it can get away. With his hand outstretched, the man from the past almost manages to grab the fleeing frog, but the frog releases a puff of white smoke and manages to escape from the protagonist's grasp. The protagonist is shocked to realize the frog managed to vanish right in front of him. He looks at the bed and sees the other defeated frogs with pins stuck in their bodies. A pool of blood and smoke forms on the bed where the frogs were defeated by the hero. Over the phone, the redhead asks what happened and if the water ninja is okay after the attack. The modern operative is shocked to see the scene through the phone and tries to understand the situation. The former warrior apologizes and says they were too late to save the prisoner. He explains that the man's symptoms are exactly the same as the other serial cases. The protagonist reports that none of the frogs are left, and that one of them managed to escape. From this, the redhead concludes that the real poison user was someone else, not the monster. The modern operative regrets the loss of the prisoner, as he was a vital source of information. But the former warrior says they didn't leave empty-handed and shows something important. He reveals that the tattoos on the man's body were done recently, not even a month ago. The redhead is shocked by the discovery and realizes what that means for the investigation. This means that until a month ago, the man was just an ordinary civilian with no powers. The modern operative explains that ninja tattoos are deep secrets and are not easy to obtain. He is shocked to learn that the man mastered the water style in such a short time. The protagonist wonders how that was possible in less than a month of training. A mysterious hand appears, and it's revealed that the poison user is increasing their pawns, and the enemy has a way of extracting ninjutsu from amateurs at an impressive speed. The redhead and the protagonist wonder how this is possible, and realize the situation is serious. If they don't act fast, people all over the city could awaken ninja abilities, and that could lead to a clan war and a mass slaughter of innocents in the city. The modern operative is terrified by the possibility, and his expression changes completely. He says the ninja union will analyze the water ninja's body to find clues. They need to look for traces of drugs or surgeries that could explain the power. The protagonist agrees with the plan and prepares for the next phase of the investigation. From the top of the building, the redhead asks Sabari to go with him to the ninja union headquarters. He explains that the situation is much bigger than they thought, and he needs to introduce him to the chief. The former warrior agrees and prepares to go to the organization and join the operation. With the full moon in the sky, the man from the past observes the city and prepares for what's to come. He tells himself it's time to go to the ninja union and solve this mystery. Meanwhile, a man wakes up in a strange place full of tropical plants and trees. With wide eyes, he tries to understand where he is and what happened to him. He wonders why he's there and how he ended up in this unknown and mysterious place. The man realizes his arms and legs are tied, and he can't move. He tries to break free from the ropes, but they are too tight, and he doesn't have the strength. A voice tells him to calm down and remember who he is to understand the situation. The man remembers he was in the middle of a mission when something hit him from behind. A ninja with a purple headband observes the man from a rooftop. He smells a strange scent in the air and wonders what that purple smoke surrounding him is. The purple smoke makes him pass out, and he falls from the roof, unable to defend himself from the attack. He wakes up and realizes he was knocked out and dragged to this unknown place. The tied-up ninja is worried because he doesn't know where he is or who his enemy is. He feels the hot, humid air and realizes the place looks a lot like a jungle. Suddenly, a green frog appears in front of him and lets out a loud, frightening croak. The man is startled by the frog's noise and looks around, trying to understand the situation. He hides behind a plant and observes several frogs scattered around the mysterious location. A female voice asks if he's finally awake, and a high-heeled boot appears. A woman with a strange mask and glowing eyes says he was sleeping like a baby. The tied-up ninja asks who she is, and the woman approaches him with a mocking smile. With an elegant gesture, the mysterious woman asks who he thinks she is with an air of mystery. The man decides to play along and asks what he gets if he guesses her identity correctly. In his thoughts, he plans to distract her with conversation to try and escape the ropes. He begins to dislocate his joints to try and free himself from the bonds holding him tightly. With a concentrated effort, he almost manages to break free, but something strange happens. His arms suddenly become heavy, and he can no longer move them as before. The woman tells him not to worry, as the only thing he can move is his head. He looks down and sees himself inside a barrel filled with a purple, bubbling liquid. The ninja realizes he's immersed in a neurotoxin and accuses the woman of being the poison user. The woman says her reputation precedes her but reveals she's not the one who produces the poison. She then shows a fraud and says they are the ones truly responsible for producing the toxin. The man is shocked by the revelation and can't believe what he just heard. The woman praises the beauty of the frogs and says they are like little jewels to her. She explains that the frogs can generate toxins from anything they eat. The woman uses a spray to feed the frog an unknown and mysterious substance. She says her only job is to provide meals for her precious and deadly frogs. The frog's throat pouch swells, and it seems to be processing the food it just received from its owner. The woman reveals that she mixes a strong poison into their food, so they create an even stronger one. She admits the mixture is complicated, but the final result is worth all the effort. The tied-up ninja accuses her of using people as test subjects for her cruel experiments. The woman replies that humans also experiment on frauds, and that it's the same thing. The fraud continues to process the substance and prepares to release the new toxin. The woman says she's going to see how the new batch of poison performs and approaches her prisoner. She squeezes the frog tightly, forcing it to release the toxin toward the tied-up man. Several frogs join in, and all release their toxins at the same time on the poor prisoner. The man feels the poison in his body and complains about the disgusting sensation taking him over. The woman says she silenced him, but admits the technique isn't perfect and can fail. She explains that with this toxin, the victim's body still remains, which can leave traces, and because of that, sooner or later, they would trace the poison back to her. The woman reveals she needs a much stronger poison to prepare for what's coming. She says that next time, she wants a poison that leaves no body or trace behind. The frog's tongue extends and prepares to strike prisoner with the new toxin. The woman wants a poison so strong it can completely erase the existence of her victims. The tied-up ninja curses at her and prepares to fight back with all his remaining strength. With his eyes glowing red, he unleashes all his power, and a fire seal appears. He uses his special technique, fire style of blazing fang, to free himself from the poison. The woman smiles and tells him to be grateful for his sacrifice in the name of her research. A ball of fire forms, and the ninja tries to use his power to attack the woman. But the frog's tongue is faster and hits the man's forehead squarely with the toxin. The poison begins to take effect, and the ninja's face starts to melt like hot wax. He screams in pain as his body slowly dissolves from the action of the powerful poison. The woman watches the scene with satisfaction and says her new poison worked perfectly. With a victorious smile, she says she got the mixture right and achieved the result she wanted. The ninja's body dissolves completely, and nothing is left but his clothes on the ground. The woman says her path of poison is truly the strongest of all ninjutsus. She kisses the frog in gratitude and admires her deadly creation with a look of pride. Meanwhile, at the Tokyo station, the protagonist and his friend prepare for a mission. They enter an elevator and descend 180 meters below ground in silence. They arrive at an ancient and mysterious temple, hidden beneath the bustling city. That place is the secret headquarters of the country's powerful and feared ninja union. The protagonist and the redhead walk through the temple courtyard toward the main hall. The former warrior is impressed by the mansion built so deep beneath the city. A woman in a kimono and wooden sandals appears to welcome them at the temple entrance. With a cage in her hand, she welcomes the two ninjas who have just arrived. The parrot inside the cage says they were waiting for the legendary ninja, Hibari. The protagonist is surprised to hear a bird speaking, and the woman apologizes for its appearance. The parrot introduces itself as Bankawa, the head of the ninja union, and says he wants to test him. The former warrior and the redhead remain silent and stare at the parrot with serious expressions. The chief explains that his technique allows him to borrow the eyes and mouths of animals. The woman in the kimono introduces herself as Shizu, the caretaker of the union chief's animals. The redhead explains that the chief always speaks through animals, and that he has never seen his real body. The parrot apologizes for not being able to show his face, and hopes they don't mind. The protagonist understands the chief's caution, as revealing his form could be a matter of life or ruin. The parrot thanks the young warrior for his understanding and prepares for the test. The redhead interrupts and asks about the test the chief mentioned for his new friend. He assures him that Hibari is trustworthy and that there's no need for a test at this time, but the chief says he doesn't doubt the report, but needs more information before acting. He explains that they need to know which element the protagonist's technique belongs to. Without knowing his element and level, they cannot authorize him to participate in the mission. The former warrior then reveals that his ninjutsu does not possess any specific element. The parrot says it is aware that the protagonist's ninjutsu has no element. The chief begins to list the 5 basic elements, starting with the fire style. Next, he mentions the water style, which is the opposite of the fire element. The third element is the lightning style, known for its speed and power. The fourth element is the earth style, which focuses on defense and manipulation of the ground. And finally, the wind style, which is focused on cutting in long-range attacks. He says that even without manifesting any of them, Goku became the strongest of all. The image shows the legendary Goku amidst a pile of defeated enemies in battle. His legend reached the modern era, but now he is in the body of a young man named Hibari. The protagonist faces the parrot with a serious look, preparing for what's to come. The chief says that with a new body, he may have gained new potential and abilities. The redhead is surprised and admits he hadn't thought of that possibility before the test. The former warrior explains that ninjutsu is the power of nature manifested through the body, and if the body changes, the element might change with it, or even awaken a new one. Suddenly, a black cat appears, and the animal caretaker looks at it with a serious expression. A candle is lit, and the test to discover the protagonist's element is about to begin. The parrot asks if the young warrior doesn't want to know what his new element is. The black cat approaches with the candle, and the chief says they will find out together. Everyone in the room watches the protagonist with anticipation and curiosity to know the result. The parrot announces the beginning of the flame reading ritual to discover the hero's power. In a large hall, the protagonist sits in front of the candle and prepares for the ritual. The redhead and the caretaker watch from a distance as the test begins in silence and concentration. With his eyes closed, the man from the past focuses on the candle's flame and on his inner self. A golden dust begins to emanate from his body, and his hair stands up with the energy. The modern operative watches the scene with admiration and surprise at his friend's power. The protagonist joins his hands as if in prayer and concentrates even more on the reading ritual. He begins to form the hand seals of the 9 syllables, starting with the seal called Rin. Next, he makes the second seal, known as Pyo, and continues the sequence. The next seals are Tito, Sha, Kai, and Jin, which he performs with precision and speed. It's explained that these are the basic seals used to refine a ninja's abilities. The next seal is Zai, which he makes with his hands closed and fingers interlaced. And finally, the Zen seal, which he makes with his hands open and fingers pointing upwards. By weaving the 9 syllables, he can awaken the dormant ninja abilities in his body. The redhead is impressed to see his friend's ninjutsu shining like a diamond. A golden aura surrounds the protagonist's body, and the room is filled with his energy. The parrot is amazed by the scene and says that the power of the legendary Goku is incredible. The animal caretaker begins to tremble and break into a cold sweat as she feels the pressure of the energy. With wide eyes, she seems to be suffering from the intensity of the hero's power. The chief tells her to close her eyes and not force herself to endure the pressure of the aura. The young woman continues to tremble and seems about to faint from the force of the ninjutsu. The chief says the caretaker doesn't yet have the training to withstand that with all 5 senses. With her eyes closed, the young woman tries to calm down and control her ragged breathing. An explanation begins about the flame reading ritual and how it works in practice. It is a way to examine the nature of a ninja's abilities through the flame of a candle. If it is the earth style, the color of the flame changes to a bright and intense green. With the ritual underway, everyone wonders what the legendary warrior's element will be. The protagonist opens his eyes, and the candle flame begins to react to his energy. The candle flame remains normal and shows no reaction to the young warrior's power. The redhead is confused and asks what happened and why nothing changed in the flame. He turns to the caretaker and asks if the ritual went wrong or if something happened. The smoke from the candle spreads through the room, and the protagonist slowly opens his eyes. He realizes that nothing happened, and that the ritual did not reveal any new element for him. The parrot remains silent, seemingly processing the unexpected result of the test. With a sigh of relief, the man from the past realizes his power remains the same. He concludes with a smile that once again, no element has manifested in his body. The redhead and the caretaker shout in surprise, unable to believe what they just saw. The protagonist stands up and says he doesn't see how the lack of an element would hinder him. The modern operative complains, saying he was really looking forward to seeing the test result. The parrot observes the scene in silence, appearing to be thinking about something important. With his eyes focused on the candle, he realizes something is wrong with the ritual's result. The chief wonders if it's possible to refine ninja abilities to that level without an element. He calls the caretaker and asks her not to extinguish the candle and to put it away as is. The parrot says he will examine the candle later to try and understand what happened. The young woman is confused by the request, but agrees to do as her master commanded. She says, "Yes, sir," and prepares to store the candle carefully for analysis. With the candle in hand, the caretaker leaves the room, leaving the others behind. The chief announces that the test is complete and that the result was unexpected for everyone. The young woman returns with a tray and hands the ninja license to the protagonist with respect. The former warrior takes the license and observes it with a serious and responsible look. The chief says he is authorized to use ninjutsu in the city as long as he avoids the public eye. He adds that if any union member questions his status, he should show the license. The parrot says that the autopsy report for the water ninja has finally arrived. The image shows the man's tattoo, and the report reveals important information about him. That the protagonist and the redhead are surprised by how quickly the information arrived. The caretaker hands a scroll to the protagonist and says the details are inside. He takes the scroll and prepares to read the information contained within it carefully. The redhead wonders if the clues about the mysterious poison user are inside. The chief announces that the protagonist is now officially a ninja of the Ninja Union. The former warrior says that, of course, he will use his power for peace, as he has always lived that way. Outside the school, the two friends look at the graffitied building and prepare for the future. The redhead plays with a fidget spinner while thinking about the new information he received. He admits the scroll caught him off guard with its revelations about the enemy. The protagonist looks at the school window, observing the students and teachers in their routines. He thinks the poison user might be hiding right there in their school. The modern operative lights up an e-cigarette and releases a thick cloud of smoke into the air. He says it's hard to believe, but the evidence points to that possibility. With a quick movement, he burns the scroll, destroying it completely to leave no trace. The former warrior says that since his house was attacked, the enemy already knows what he looks like. The redhead agrees, saying this puts the protagonist at a huge disadvantage in the mission. But with a confident smile, the man from the past tells the enemy to come on because he's ready. The two friends walk through the schoolyard, preparing to find the poison user. From a distance, a mysterious figure with a mask watches them intently with a sinister smile. The masked woman seems to be planning her next move against the two ninjas. Inside the classroom, a silhouette with a bright smile appears in the dark window. The protagonist and the redhead climb the school stairs, with graffiti all over the walls. The hero's friend wonders how the poison user could be at the school if he already checked everything. He then concludes that this poison user is on a completely different level than him. The story then flashes back a few hours, showing the two friends in a city park. At that moment, the protagonist was about to eat his packed lunch with meat and white rice. Sitting on the bench, he eats and thinks that he never imagined eating meat with rice in his life. With that, he puts the piece of meat in his mouth and enjoys the simple and delicious meal. His expression changes completely as he is shocked by the incredible flavor of the food. With a smile, he says the food is luxurious, and the redhead finds his friend's reaction amusing. After eating, he turns to his friend and asks what's written on the scroll. The redhead explains that the water ninja was a normal civilian until recently. The former warrior listens intently to the information from the report without saying a word. The photo reveals a bald man named Shitashi Shizuku, who was a public employee. He had a history of petty crimes, but loved his pet fish above all else. The scroll says that his fish were collected and are being cared for by the chief. The man from the past is happy to know the fish are okay and continues to listen. His friend reveals that the autopsy found a small injection mark on the man's body. Upon hearing this, The protagonist's eyes widen as he understands the gravity of the situation. The redhead shouts that the sudden awakening of ninjutsu must be linked to that injection. He then says the most shocking part is that they traced the origin of the needles used. These mysterious needles seem to have been mass-produced for a specific purpose. Using his technique, the chief had the city's animals track the delivery of the needles. An eagle flies over the city, following the trail left by the mysterious needles. And to everyone's surprise, the delivery destination was the school where they study. The protagonist understands the situation, and the flashback of the conversation in the park finally ends. Back in the present, the former warrior picks up a branch from the ground and starts thinking. He concludes that the poison user is hiding somewhere inside the school. With a small blade, he begins to sharpen the tip of the branch, and his friend gets startled. The redhead asks what he's doing, and the young man says it's better than nothing. With a confident smile, he calls the sharpened branch his little secret weapon. The two friends then enter the school building, ready to find the enemy. The modern operative warns his friend that the enemy already knows who they are and what they look like. He tells his companion to be careful with anyone who approaches him at school. In the hallway, some girls see him and get excited, even wanting to record a TikTok with him. One of them praises him for taking down a bully named Kumazawa. The redhead is shocked and wonders how they know about the fight that happened with the bully. A teacher appears and calls him to the guidance office after class because of the fight. The hero's friend realizes something is very wrong, as even the teacher knows about the incident. He remembers that only they were in the fight, and the bully's cronies wouldn't say anything. With everyone knowing about the fight, the redhead wonders who they can trust at the school. The redhead yells in desperation that the situation is very bad for them right now. He imagines that if the poison user is in the middle of the crowd, they will be attacked. With a serious look, the protagonist says they have probably already been marked by the enemy. He deduces that someone was watching the fight with Kumazawa from a distance the whole time. The image focuses on the eye of the frog that was spying on their fight in the schoolyard. The former warrior becomes thoughtful and starts putting the pieces of the puzzle together. With a smile, he bets that it was the poison user who spread the rumor about the fight. Even if they run away, the students will keep chasing them because their cover is already blown. The crowd of students runs towards the two friends in the hallway. With the crowd approaching, the protagonist says it's time to act and resolve the situation. He then shows a coin to his friend with a confident smile and gets ready for the plan. With a blue energy, he flicks the coin with incredible force, and the redhead is shocked. The coin flies like a bullet and shatters the hallway window into 1,000 pieces. The shards of glass fly everywhere, and the crowd of students gets scared. The hero's friend's jaw drops, and a girl screams in fright at the noise. The students stop, and the protagonist warns them to be careful with the floor. The redhead is impressed, realizing his friend broke the window with a coin. The modern operative finally understands the plan and looks at the floor full of glass shards. The shards of glass become traps, and the teacher tells everyone to go back to their classrooms. The teacher says she will call a janitor, and a female student says goodbye to the protagonist. The redhead says they avoided the crowd, but it didn't solve their real problem. But with a smile, the former warrior says that now he understands everything about the enemy. He then reveals to his shocked friend that he already knows who the poison user is. The hero says there will be no more surprise attacks, and that now it's their turn to strike. They then arrive at the guidance office, where the teacher is waiting for them. Inside the room, the teacher is preparing tea while waiting for the student to arrive. She complains about him being late and thinks that she even bought sweets for their talk. Suddenly, the protagonist enters the room, and the teacher is startled by his arrival. With a serious look, he faces her, and the woman greets him with a surprised expression. She says that he really came, and before she can start her lecture, he tells her to stop pretending. The protagonist then accuses her of being the poison user, and the teacher plays dumb. In a flashback, he asks if she thought no one had noticed her reaction. The scene flashes back to the moment the window was broken, and all the students screamed. While everyone was looking at the glass, he attacked each of their blind spots. With a swift movement, he launched something towards the crowd of students. The attack was aimed at every single student in the hallway. He used small wooden needles that hit all the students at once. The needles were harmless and didn't hurt anyone because they were very small. The teacher was also in the middle of the crowd and was hit by the attack, but he says she was the only one who dodged by reflex, proving she wasn't normal. The young man explains that needles are one of the basic weapons of a trained and experienced ninja. That's why he states that an ordinary teacher wouldn't be able to dodge his attack. The teacher starts laughing uncontrollably, revealing her true identity. With a crazed look, she screams and shows her villainous face to the young warrior. She admits she was caught and, with a pen in hand, says she will take him down right there. The narrator explains that the poison user is the culprit behind the incidents in the city. With a crazy look, the teacher admits she has been discovered by the young warrior. The protagonist then says he's going to finish her right there with the pen in his hand. She laughs at the threat and says there's no longer any reason to stay in that body. The hero faces her with a serious and determined look, ready for the battle about to begin. With a scream, she rips her blouse, revealing 2 scorpion tattoos on her body. The former warrior recognizes the mark and realizes it's a shinobi tattoo. At that, her body begins to contort and change shape in a bizarre way. The transformation continues, and her bones bend into positions impossible for a human. A purple smoke envelopes her body as the metamorphosis finally completes. Her clothes change into a black outfit, and her body becomes much stronger and more defined. The man from the past realizes she is using a ninja transformation technique. He concludes that this ninja is an experienced and very dangerous veteran to face. His focused gaze shows that he understands the seriousness of the situation and the enemy's level. The ninja now wears a white mask, and her previously short hair is now long and red. The villain then introduces herself as Mocha, the ninja who was hiding as a teacher. The former warrior is surprised because she even managed to change her physique. Mocha praises him for his perception and says she thought her disguise was perfect. Suddenly, she starts croaking like a frog and prepares to attack her opponent. She bends in a strange way and continues to make frog sounds in the middle of the room. With a battle cry, she leaps toward the protagonist with incredible speed. A blue aura surrounds the hero's neck, and he prepares for the fight that is starting. The 2 ninjas run towards each other, and the first exchange of blows is about to begin. With a sinister smile, the villain faces the protagonist, who has a serious expression. He attempts a kick, but the ninja defends it using her tail like a sharp whip. With a quick movement, she dodges the attack and positions herself behind the young warrior. The 2 exchange blows at high speed, and the fight becomes increasingly intense and dangerous. Suddenly, the former warrior notices something, and his eyes widen in surprise. The ninja is holding an injection needle with a mysterious green liquid. She advances with the syringe and tries to inject the substance into her opponent's body. At the same time, her tongue stretches out, and a frog emerges from her mouth to attack the young man. The hero dodges with a flip and throws some traps on the floor to defend himself. He realizes she uses a strange and erratic fighting style to confuse him. He knows he can't let his guard down, as a single scratch could be his end. The villain gets irritated that he dodged her attack and glares at him with hatred. The young warrior counter-attacks and hits the ninja's body with a quick and precise blow. She looks at her hand and sees the broken syringe with the substance leaking out. The young man says he noticed she was holding something dangerous during the exchange of blows, so he took the chance to break the syringe with his pen and prevent the worst. The villain screams in anger over the wasted substance as a green gas rises from the floor. She complains that it's very difficult to make the substance, and that he has no idea what he ruined. The villain says it's different from making medicine, and that one dose can take down a normal human. To create the ideal substance, she needs many samples and human sacrifices. With a crazed look, she asks if he understood the cost before breaking the syringe. With a blue aura, the hero asks how many people she took out for her experiments. The ninja calmly replies that she took out 178 people for her research, and she adds that since she arrived in the city, there have been only 14 victims. The villain says she makes a point to remember each of her human sacrifices. Upon hearing this, a dark and powerful aura envelops the protagonist's body. With his eyes glowing, he charges full force at the ninja with his pen in hand. Suddenly, the name of a girl named Amami Yui appears on the screen with a smile. The former warrior grabs her by the neck and asks if that was the name of one of her victims. With the pen pointed at her neck, the situation becomes even more tense. He then asks how the girl is doing now, and the villain gives a sinister smile. The man from the past falls silent and realizes that something very bad is about to happen. The scene shifts to an apartment building where a girl is in her room. This is Amami Yui, and she is in her room peacefully doing yoga. On her phone, a yoga pilot's video helps her stay in shape and healthy. With headphones on, she stretches and enjoys her moment of peace and tranquility. Back at the fight, the ninja confirms that the girl is now her hostage and is in danger. She explains that her ninjutsu is remote-controlled, using hidden poisonous frogs. A large red stain appears, and the protagonist's face turns grim. With a smile, the villain mockingly asks if he got angry about the situation. She then threatens him, telling him not to move even a single step, or things will get worse. Because if he moves, she will take out the young Amami Yui without a second thought. Suddenly, a horde of poisonous frogs appears on the ceiling of the guidance office. The frogs begin to drool a strange liquid and prepare for the attack. The protagonist stands still and faces the scene with his pen in hand, not knowing what to do. The liquid from the frogs drips onto the floor, and a yellow smoke rises from the corrosion. The villain approaches and asks if he's surprised by her well-planned trap. She used her ninjutsu to camouflage the frogs and was waiting for the right moment. With a smile, she says her frogs are very good at hiding and waiting. She threatens him, saying that if he doesn't want the girl to be harmed, he just has to let her take him down. The protagonist then says she's using a hostage to win the fight. She agrees, saying that it's one of the most common tactics for a ninja. But with a confident look, the man from the past tells her to try her luck. The ninja is shocked by the unexpected response, and her eyes go wide. She freezes for a moment, unable to understand her opponent's confidence. Through gritted teeth, she becomes furious at the young warrior's audacity. She yells that he's bluffing, but suddenly all her frogs drop, taken down. But the ninja doesn't care and screams for their tongues to pierce and finish the protagonist. With a crazy smile, she continues to give orders to her mysterious creatures. The ninja screams for their tongues to scatter the hero's organs and for him to have a horrible end. She repeats the order for her creatures to finish the young warrior without mercy. With red eyes full of hatred, she continues to scream in fury. She then orders her creatures to deal a gruesome finishing blow to the young man. Suddenly, the protagonist vanishes, and the ninja is confused, not understanding what happened. She can't believe her eyes and wonders how he moved if the hostage is still in danger. In an instant, he appears behind her and lands a precise blow on her neck. The ninja is in shock, and the former warrior says a few words in a low, serious voice. With a single blow, he strikes the villain's throat and defeats her once and for all. Her mask falls to the floor, and the ninja stares at the protagonist with a look of surprise. With a final breath, the villain's body falls lifelessly to the floor, and the fight finally ends. A purple smoke begins to rise from the ninja's body, and the protagonist watches the scene. The lifeless body transforms into a giant, defeated fraud on the classroom floor. The young man realizes she used a fraud as a decoy and compliments her on her substitution technique. The substitution technique is a very useful ninja ability in dangerous situations. The ninja swaps places with a nearby object and escapes a deadly attack from their enemy, but to use it with a living being requires very advanced ninjutsu control. Substitution using a fraud is an advanced technique for a remote control ninja. The protagonist turns to the hidden ninja and asks what she thought of his move. With a hateful look, the villain writhes in pain from the wound in her throat. She screams in anger and glares at him with her red eyes full of fury and great pain. She then begins to form hand seals, preparing for her last, desperate attack. She screams for her frogs to attack the hostage girl at the protagonist's house. Meanwhile, the girl finishes her yoga pose, and the frogs prepare to attack. The frogs leap towards the girl, and the attack begins with great speed. But suddenly, the hero's red, Haired friend appears and says he won't let that happen. With a smoky aura, he appears in the girl's room to protect her from danger. With smoke clones, he attacks the poisonous frogs and saves the girl from the attack. With a single blow, he defeats all the frogs, and a purple smoke spreads through the room. This is the protagonist's friend's smoke style, smoke clone technique. The girl is out of breath and says there were only 5 seconds left to finish her exercise. The redhead complains that attacking a beautiful woman is unforgivable to him and his principles. He assures her that Hattori is looking after her and that nothing bad will happen to the young lady. With his e-cigarette in his mouth, he thinks that everything went just as his friend planned. In a flashback, the protagonist asks the redhead to protect the house and the girl. His friend is surprised and asks if he's going to fight the poison user alone. He worries about his friend's safety and questions if he's sure about the plan. The former warrior tells him not to worry and that he will handle his part of the mission. The man from the past explains that based on the precision of the attacks, it was a remote control ninja. He says that this type of ninja always attacks 2 places at once and takes a hostage. The redhead confirms that the hostage is safe and asks about his friend's situation. Looking through the window, the modern operative is enchanted by the girl's beauty. He thinks she's beautiful up close and gets jealous of his friend for living with her. With hearts in his eyes and smoke coming out of his ears, he falls completely in love. Back at the school, the sun sets, and the fight between the 2 ninjas continues with intensity. The protagonist says the hostage plan didn't work, and the ninja writhes in pain. She praises him for bringing a friend and says it was a good move on his part. With a blue aura, he agrees and says she left herself very vulnerable to an attack. With red eyes full of anger, the ninja prepares to attack again. She screams at him to shut up and advances with her tongues to pierce his body. The hero faces the attack head on and prepares to counter attack without showing fear. With a swift movement, he cuts through all the ninja's attacks, and red liquid flies everywhere. He says he has already read her movements, and that she isn't that big of a threat. With a quick and precise cut, he uses his pin like a blade and attacks her. The frog used in the substitution is cut in half, and the ninja screams in pain and surprise. She falls from the ceiling, and a red spray goes everywhere from the young warrior's precise blow. The young man says he and the girl aren't close, but he protected her anyway. In a flashback, the girl asks if he's already leaving for school in the morning. She praises him for going back to school right after being discharged from the hospital. With a smile, she asks him not to be late and says she will worry about him. Back at the fight, the ninja is hit by several pens and screams in pain from the injuries. The protagonist thinks that no one has ever worried about him, and that confuses him. He says yes, and the ninja glares at him with a look of pain and great suffering, but he admits it wasn't a bad feeling, and that's why he made an important decision. The villain screams for him to stop attacking her, but he continues with his precise blows. He decides to buy milk for the girl and get home in time for dinner. The ninja glares at him with her red eyes, seemingly at her limit from the pain. The protagonist then says he will end the fight right there and prepares for the finale. With a pained smile, the villain seems to be planning something to turn the tables. With the pens in his hand, he prepares for the final blow to finish the ninja. Suddenly, his body stops moving, and he can't understand what happened. He realizes he's been affected by a substance, but didn't feel anything during the exchange of blows. The ninja looks down at him from upside down with a victorious and very mocking smile. She asks what happened and looks at him with an air of superiority and contempt. With a smile, she asks if he wants her to explain what happened to him. She calls him a brat and asks who the real rookie is in the battle of ninjas. With a scream, she says that the real show of her path of poison begins now. Meanwhile, the girl waits by the window and complains about how long the protagonist is taking. With a worried look, she stares at the horizon and waits for news of her friend. She thinks he should be back soon and seems very anxious about his delay.